Hello and thank you for joining me for part 3 of our roll and release program. My name's Paige and we're going to go into a bit deeper with these trigger balls. Now that we've warmed up the body, we can go deeper now. So it is beneficial and more effective if we dive in with the trigger ball after we've done our foam rolling. But if you haven't, that's okay. If you go straight into with the trigger ball, just make sure you're warming up the body, warming up that area just by rolling over the top of it just lightly for about a minute. But I'll show you a bit more of a method in a moment, but make sure you warm up first. Now it's the same as massage therapy. So we're warming up the muscles first with our hands, we're creating blood flow, we're softening, we're relaxing the muscle, and then we go deeper with our elbows and with our thumbs. It's the same as a trigger ball. But what does it actually do and how? Let's get a little bit nerdy real quick. By pressing down and pushing on that trigger point with a stimulus, the trigger ball, we're causing a desensitization effect to the muscle and to that trigger point, but also interrupting that neuromuscular loop, which is all causing that pain and that trigger point and that reactive trigger point. We want to then, it'll soften and it'll let go and it will release. We might even have a little bit of a twitch feeling going on, but that's great. That means we're on the right spot, and that means it's interrupting and we're letting go and it's releasing and we're decreasing that pain. It's the same if someone has a cramp, they're immediately going to stop and they're going to try and stretch out or massage that spot just to relax and release. And we're interrupting that neuromuscular loop as well by trying to stretch or by trying to massage, and then the cramp is going to dissipate and subside. So now we'll just get straight into it. The method that we're going to use is we just use this ball to explore around. We put our body weight over the top. So let's start on the glutes now. Put our body weight over the top. And we'll also do some other muscles in a moment up against the wall, but I'll show you that in a moment. So body weight on top, we're going to search around. So glutes first, search around, and I guarantee you're going to have a lot of spots here. Alrighty, so there's one here. Now we just want to stop and melt and hold until that pain goes away. So when that pain goes away, that means the muscle tissue has relaxed, the trigger point has released, and then we can move on. You can go back and revisit it if you like. That's totally fine, and that will give a deeper release too. A bit more of a thorough release. Now we can do this about 3 times a week if you like. I wouldn't do it every single day. We just want to release those areas that are quite tight, but it just depends on your body, depends on how often you do it, how much exercise you're doing, and how sore you're actually getting. Whereas foam rolling, you can do every day if you like. All right, so stop, melt, hold, breathing. On to the next spot. Go straight in, try and relax that bottom leg as best as you can. Whew. Breathing. Now sometimes it might take even up to a minute for the pain to go away, and that's okay. If you need to pause the video, that's fine. And just really melt and make sure that muscle's releasing and the pain's going away. Okay, that's starting to go away now. Or if it gets to about a 2 or a 3 out of 10 on the pain scale, just move on. But if it's a really reactive one and it's something that you really want to nail, I would definitely sit and wait and hold until that pain goes away and revisit it. Okay, now it's moving on, moving up higher. Making sure you're not sinking into that shoulder, pushing up, core on, really melting. Try to relax that bottom leg. Breathing. All right, let's move on to our TFL. So remember from foam rolling, it might have been a little bit tricky to get into. Trigge ball, perfect for TFL. I always use a Trigge ball in my TFL. I do a lot of running and I find my TFL gets really, really tight. Probably maybe because I'm not activating my glutes like I should. And so the TFL will take over. Holding, trying to surrender, breathe. Moving around to the front a little bit more. Surrendering, melting. Break up those adhesive bonds, interrupting that neuromuscular loop. Melting. If you need more time, that's fine. Just pause the video again if you like. Okay, now we're going to roll onto the top of our quad now. Great to roll out these areas, especially this top of the quad, our hip flexors, as we're sitting in hip flexion all the time at our desk, driving. We want to lengthen and release these hip flexors here. By doing so, we're going to be taking pressure off our pelvis and therefore taking pressure off our lower back as well. So it's so important to open up these hip flexors, open up the hips, release the glutes, melting into it. Strong upper body, strong core. I've got to go and do a bit of a scan of my body and check that everything is supported. Everything's strong. So strong support system. Okay, let's move on to the other side now. Okay, finding that tight spot. Guarantee you're going to have a lot. Found one straight away. For time's sake, you can even pause the video and just do a very thorough release of your glutes. As I'm just going to move a little bit quicker through this side. Trying to melt this bottom leg. I know it can be difficult sometimes. Even come down onto your elbow if you need to. And then we're about to find that TFL spot, so rolling over onto our TFL. Really trying to melt, surrender to the ball. Breathing, hold. You might feel a little bit of a twitch response here. That is great. Hitting the nail on the head. Okay, moving over to the front of our quad now. Holding. Now, if you feel like this is getting in deeper, which is great, you can also add in some cross fiber frictions like we did on the foam roller where we rocked from side to side widthways. This is so great to break up the adhesions as well as holding. Breathing. Onto the top of that quad now, those hip flexors. A lot of sport, we're using our hip flexors when we're running, for playing soccer, even when we're surfing. So we're always using our hip flexion muscles. So we want to counteract that. We want to stretch those out, and we also want to foam roll and trigger ball these muscles too. Restore functionality, get the length back in, restore the range of motion, restore mobility. Okay, there's another one there. Whew. Surrender, release, breathe, core on, stabilize through that shoulder joint. Alrighty, so that was glutes, TFL, a little bit of top of the quad. Now, let's just move into our feet now. So what I like to do is just put the ball in the arch of the foot. Now, because we haven't been able to foam roll this out, the foam roll is a bit too big for the arch of our feet. So let's just have a roll on top of the ball now. I don't need much more pressure than this, but if you find this isn't doing anything, you can be in standing, but go up against a wall so you have some support. And really rolling from that heel up to the ball of the foot. This is great. If people have high arches, your arches are going to be working a little bit more, a little bit harder than someone that has flatter feet. Okay. If anyone is starting to get sore arches, that can progress into plantar fasciitis. We want to stop and prevent that from happening. You can also stretch out those toes as we're rolling. Remember how we are adding movement when we're rolling. Stretch out that fascia. And then stop and melt. If you need a little bit more downward pressure, do this in standing, or just put your other foot on top. Press down. I'm activating my hamstrings here to pull down. Moving up the foot to a different spot. Add a little rocking if you like. And really melt. Even lift the glutes off just a little bit more downward pressure. And then let's roll out. Smooth out. Okay, changing feet. Oop. Rolling. And we can do some rocking here. Rocking from side to side. Pulling up those toes, adding the movement, stretching out that fascia. Okay, so then let's just stop. Do a trigger point release. Foot on top of the other. Bringing that glute off the mat if you need some more downward pressure. This is borderline for me. I probably don't need any more. You can even slowly lift up the toes if you like. It gives it another stretch. You can probably see on my face, it's hurting a little bit. Lower back down, roll and smooth out. Okay, so we can even move up to our gastroc area. Now I know we did roll that out on the foam roller, which is good, but if you did find when you were rolling out on the foam roller that you need just a little bit more work or a little bit more of a precise release, targeted release. So I did find I had a bit of a tight spot just on my lateral gastroc head here. Gastrocnemius head. We only have two of them, so we have our lateral head and our medial head. Okay, so there it is there. I'm just going to melt and put downward pressure on top and breathe. If you don't have one on your lateral head, just see if there's one on the medial head. That's the gastroc head that's towards the midline of the body. Yep, there we go. Got one there. Leg on top. Melting. Breathing. Okay, other side now. Let's try the outside, that lateral head. Okay, there it is. On top. Melt, surrender. Just let go. Try and relax that muscle. Sometimes I find I'm just guarding, muscle guarding, and it's still hanging on and it's still tight, and I have to really think about relaxing that muscle, because I am in just a little bit of pain. Sometimes your muscles can go into that protection mode, but we need to just breathe through that and relax them. Okay, let's find one on that medial head there. There it is. Stop, melt. Some more downward pressure if you need. This is great for runners. Bounding along your toes all the time. Our gastrocnemius, our calf, our soleus, our Achilles, they're our first shock absorbers from the ground, so they take a lot of the force when we're running, so it's so important to try and release these muscles here. They tighten up very quickly, so it's so beneficial. Yep, roll out first with your foam roller and then get deeper with your trigger ball. All right, so that's our gastroc done. Hamstrings, it's a little bit trickier to trigger ball with our in our hamstrings. You can give it a go if you like. I find it can be easier to do it on a chair. So for sitting on a chair, have the trigger ball underneath. We have downward pressure on top because we're sitting on the chair. And then what you can do is add in some movement. So we're extending the knee out as we're sitting on the chair and doing it that way, because we know how it was a little bit tricky to do movement when we're doing foam rolling of the hamstring. This is great to add in and stretch out that fascia when we're sitting on the chair here with the trigger ball. So we're doing that on the chair. I even do this at work sometimes if I'm sitting in my office, or if I'm sitting in front of the classroom with the students. I'll just get the trigger ball underneath as I'm doing some marking and trying to release my hamstring. So here I'm not feeling much, it's better to be on a chair. Or we could try to have a little bit of a feel here and do it on the mat. Melting, breathing, surrendering. Move spots, let's go down towards the knee a bit more here. And you can also lean forward just to put that hamstring on stretch just a little bit more, stretching out that fascia, bringing the toes up closer to your head as well. Okay, and changing spots. Onto more of that medial hamstring now. leg on top, putting downward pressure. Leaning forward, trying to stretch out that hamstring. Really melting, surrendering, make sure you're breathing. We want to soften that trigger point. Okay, let's go closer up to our pelvis now, up closer to our sit bone. This one's a little bit tender for me, so take it easy. Let's just ease our way into it. Breathe. There's going to be a spot just right under that pelvis, under that bone there. There'll be a spot, that's where all our hamstrings come into the tendon. It's that musculotendinous junction. We want to put the ball right on there. That's going to help release all of the hamstrings. Breathing. And let's swap legs now. Okay, onto the hamstring, let's find that lateral spot. I mean, if you don't have a little spot on the lateral side, that's okay. Go straight over to the medial. If you have a few, just remember you can always pause this video, take your time, really breathe into it. And moving over to that medial side now. Putting your body weight over the top, leaning forward, stretching out, releasing, surrendering. Closer to our sit bone now. Okay, there it is. Surrendering. Now sometimes if you feel that you can't feel anything in that spot, just move a centimeter or even half a centimeter, a millimeter, just around that area, and I guarantee you can find one. Or if you feel like you're almost on it, just keep searching, keep exploring for a spot that just feels a little bit more tender. Okay, here we go. This one's it. Release. I don't need to put my other leg on top, that's enough. And let's lean forward, stretch into it. Breathing, surrendering. Okay, now let's move up into our lower back. So we did roll out this area before, but let's get a little bit more deeper and targeted into our quadratus lumborum. So we have our paraspinals that go along our spine, and then deep to that is our quadratus lumborum, or your QL, which I'll refer to. Okay, so leaning back onto the ball, try and position it in a spot that you do feel is a little bit tender. Now being in this position right now might be enough pressure over the top, or you could lay right down if you like. This is enough for me. Making sure our core is turned on, belly button to spine. We want to make sure we still have that great strong support through our shoulders as well. If you want to release that bottom leg, it might help you to relax your QL and your spinal muscles a little bit more. And let's move to the next spot now. So making sure we are on an angle here. So this left hip is higher than my right. I can feel this spot. So let's find that QL spot. So I'm not on my ribs, I'm not on my spine, and I'm not on my hip bones. I'm just in this area here. And just move from side to side. If you can't find it, there'll be a little bit more of a tender spot about here. And really breathe. Okay, we're gonna go up into our scapulars now. In between, we've got our rhomboids, we've got our trapezius. So we'll do this quickly on the mat, and then we will do it up against the wall as well. So we want to try to get the ball in between our scapulars here, or shoulder blades, and there are going to be a few little trigger points all the way up along our scapulars, and then we'll get to our upper traps and our neck in a moment. So just lying back onto the ball, trying to find that scapula, and I like to tip my head and support it on the mat here. Okay, so I've got a sore spot here, so stop, really melt, surrender. If you need to bring your arms out wider for support, do so. It's taking a little bit more pressure off the ball, so therefore less pain, but you gauge this as you go. If you want to, you can also add in movement here, so abducting the arm up over the head, and bringing it down towards the hips. It's going to be putting our rhomboids on stretch, and it's going to help release our muscle just a little bit quicker. And then let's move the ball up just ever so slightly until we find the next spot. It might only be a centimetre above. Breathe, melt, surrender. You might need to do a huge exhale in this spot just to really try and make sure all your muscles are letting go. Add in the movement if you like. You can even come down to 90, come across the body and down. Across the body and down, making sure your core is still turned on. And let's move up a little bit higher now. Move the arm up above head, coming down to 90, across the body. This is going to put our scapula and our rhomboids on even more of a stretch, and out, down. Moving up a little bit higher now. Moving the arm and down, out to 90, across the body. This is a great release if we've been doing a lot of bent over rows. We're going to be working and targeting those rhomboids and those lower traps. So we can get a little bit tight and stiff through here. So it's a great release with this Trigge ball through those rhomboids and lower traps. A little bit higher here. Out to 90, across the body. Breathing. And back down. One more spot and then we'll swap sides. Out to 90, across the body. And down. Okay, we'll go over to the other side of our QL now. We'll just speed through this side. If you need to stop and pause, that's okay. And I don't know if you can see the ball as good on this side either. Lowering down in that QL area, breathing, melting. You can rock from side to side if you can't find that spot. Moving it up a little bit higher now. And really trying to relax and melt into that ball. Release that bottom leg if it's in bent up. Moving up to the scapulars now. Doing the exact same thing as what we did on the other side. Finding that tight spot. Okay, there it is. I've just got my arm on my chest just so I can show you. Arm comes up above the head and down, across the body and out, melt. Go up a little bit higher now. Hold. Moving that arm up above the head, down to 90 degrees, across the body, really stretching out that scapula, and down. Moving up a little bit higher. Across the body, and down. Once more. Now I guarantee you're going to have more spots than this, so go ahead and try and hit them all. Coming up above the head, down to 90, across the body, really stretching out that rhomboid there, and back down. Alrighty, so I'm going to just jump up now. So the next part I'm going to show you is up against the wall. So we'll do rhomboids and our back against the wall as well. Pecs, posterior cuff. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is with the Trigge ball, we're going to get into our posterior cuff here. So we've got a little bit of posterior delt, our infraspinatus, our teres major, teres minor, our lats too. So we're going to come up against the wall here, start down near your posterior deltoid. And what we're going to do is just roll along that posterior deltoid, and you'll find that there's a tight band along there. Bringing the arm across the body. Now sometimes it'll slip out just like that, so it's okay just to hold with your hand. Even give yourself a little bit of a hug here. And then find that tight spot. Push. So I'm nearly pushing most of my body weight against the wall. And then we can roll out and add in some movement here. We're going to lengthen and stretch that muscle, stretching the fascia. Bring the arm across. We're going to get more into that infraspinatus, which is the muscle on that shoulder blade. A bit slippery sometimes. Okay, hold. Push. You can get a lot of pain here for surfing, swimming. It's that interior, internal, external rotation. It's that internal rotation that can just make this muscle just a little bit angry. Okay, so from here, let's go on the midline and to the midline of the body of the scapula. So we're on the scapula just then, now we're off. So it's similar to what we did on the mat, just up against the wall. Sometimes you don't really have time to jump down onto the floor, so we'll just get back onto the wall now. Sometimes I'll do this in my office if I've got a quick 5 minutes, and I'm not gonna jump down onto the carpet. So you can see here I'm really pushing against the wall. You can add in movement again, that's like what we did on the floor. And just slightly moving down. And down again. You might need to readjust. I'm on my tippy toes now, so let's just bend down a little bit more. And now being down this low, I can really use my quads and push back into that wall there. And stop and hold. I find these muscles along here, when they're really tight and when they're really angry, it sort of gives me a bit of a headache. So we want to release these muscles, because if they're really tight, they're going to be putting pressure on our scapulars, therefore putting pressure up our neck, pressure into the base of our skull, and then can give us a little bit of a headache. So I like to get on this foam roller, onto the trigger ball, and roll out and try and release these muscles that might be giving me a bit of a little headache. Add in your movement again. Now just be careful, we don't want to add too much movement in or the ball will fall out. Okay. Now I'll also show you how we can release our pecs and our upper traps. So I'm just going to release now. Just be careful. Pulling out the ball. So we want to get the ball up against the wall, and we're going to roll out and really try to melt and twist. Going to roll out and really get deep into the pecs here. So having your arm and your hand and your elbow up into 90 degrees here. Just like we want to give the wall a big hug. This way we're also stretching out our pecs and then having downward pressure with the foam, with the trigger ball. Move it into the next spot. We really need to release and stretch out our pecs. How often are we sitting at the laptop, on our phones? Everything we do is out in front of us, shortening our pecs. We want to open up our chest. So this is super, super important. Doing trigger ball release through our pecs, stretching through our pecs. And then that's going to create better reaction in the back of our shoulders and in our upper back. You see a lot of people all the time, they're really rounded like this, pecs are short. Doing our stretching and our trigger balling, we want to open that back up for better posture. Okay, so I'm just trying to find the next spot. And if you need, make sure you hang on to the ball. Once we get closer to that collarbone or that clavicle, can slip out just a little bit. You can come closer to the sternum if you like. Don't go onto the sternum. We haven't got muscle there, just drop off. And I'm really trying to push against that ball. I'm using my legs and the power from the floor to push against. Okay, so let's just do a bit more of a stretch here. I'm finding that I'm going to put the ball a little bit closer to the shoulder joint now. And really pushing against. Okay, so from here, now from here, we're just going to move over to a solid wall. It's a bit of a corner, or I like to use a doorway as well to release the upper traps. So what we're going to do, it's almost like we want to tackle that wall. So that's the position we want to get into. So hinging at the hips, and you'll have to hold the trigger ball here. So coming in, we want to target this muscle here. So that medial part, so not on the shoulder joint, and not really up on our neck, not on our clavicle, our collarbone, but just on that meaty section here. and moving forward, bending into it. I'm really hinging at the hips here and just pushing up against. You might need to hinge at the hips a little bit more and just finding a tight spot and really pushing in. They call upper traps your headache muscle. So sometimes when we're stressed or we've got a lot going on, maybe we've done a lot of shoulder shrugs, we're going to put stress on this muscle, and it can also give us a little bit of a headache. So if you just jump on your trigger ball, go through this movement, through this technique, and putting pressure through the ball into that upper traps, just really trying to melt. You can even just bring that arm down if you need to into more of a relaxed position. Hold until that pain goes away. Okay, let's do the other side now. So I'm putting that ball in that spot here where I think that I might have a trigger point. And then let's go down and push in that way. Usually my left side is tighter than my right. I'm a little bit weaker on my left. So it just tries to work a little bit harder to keep up with my right hand, my right arm. So this one's pretty tight. Push. Try to relax, surrender, breathe. I'm going to break up that adhesion, relax that trigger point, interrupt that neuromuscular loop. Now, right now I'm putting some pretty hard force through my body onto this trigger ball, but really ease into it if you haven't done this before. You can see how far back my foot is to pushing into the ball. If that trigger point is really, really reactive, you might need to put less because it might be too painful for you, and just ease your way into it. Now, if you do feel some referred pain, which could happen up in your head, it might feel like a little bit of a headache, that's okay because this is what's causing that headache. So sometimes what we need to do is release that muscle that's causing the headache, and that might actually feel like a little bit of a headache at that time. It's just referred pain and it's okay. It's what we're actually looking for. Alrighty, so that was it for upper traps. Now, if you want to do a little bit through your neck, you can do it up against the wall if you like, or back down on the mat, but I'll just quickly show you up against the wall. Now I'm going to hold that. And I'm just on the base of my skull, rocking from side to side. Your upper traps, levator scap, your spinae muscles all attach into the base of your skull. So we can release it in this area here. Slightly rolling up and down, side to side. And melting. And you can repeat that on the other side if you like. So moving over to the other side now. Holding that ball, base of the skull. Breathing, trying to surrender, melting into that trigger ball. Okay, great. So that's it. That's all we have for our trigger ball release and our foam rolling program. So I hope that this has helped roll out your body, release, made you a little bit more mobile, decrease some pain. Thank you so much for watching.